This is Fraud to Fearless.
Friends, you are made for more purpose, more confidence, more impact. Because when you live fearless, you inspire others to do the same.
Let's go!
Brooke, do you remember the last difficult conversation we had?
The last difficult conversation.
Do we have a lot of them? Seems like you're
No.
thinking.
I'm just like, do we want to count going through taxes? That wasn't a difficult
Yes.
conversation. That was just a painful experience.
Y'all, for those of you that are entrepreneurs and running your own business or are thinking about doing it and you want to do it with a partner, choose very wisely, because the thing they don't teach you in business school is eventually you're going to have to file taxes. And as an accounting undergrad major, you don't appreciate how many forms you have to fill out. Brooke and I spent 6 hours last weekend literally filing taxes. And Brooke, without giving too much away, it's not like there was a ton of activity to document. You know, it's not like we've got a million transactions. So what a weekend, but we made it through together.
Yeah. It's these high pressure situations that can get dangerous when there's conflict, if there's conflict. And I think that's a perfect lead in to difficult conversations. We want to talk about difficult conversations head on.
Head on. Yeah, we're going to talk about the goal today. We're continuing our leadership series, and arguably, Brooke, I would say one of the most important skill sets a leader can have is being able to navigate difficult conversations with their team. So firing someone, never fun, giving feedback, critical feedback, telling someone that they're not meeting expectations, they're not performing, or someone made a bad decision. They either, made a mistake or they made some sort of behavioral mess up, lapse in judgment that needs to be corrected. And then remember, imposter to empowered in work-life relationships. How often in life, in relationships, do you have a difficult conversation with a friend, with a sibling, with a podcast co-host, with a child? There is an endless amount of difficult conversations that we're going to have in life. And Brooke, curious your thoughts about this, but I have not met very many people who enjoy them. It's pretty rare to enjoy having a difficult conversation.
Hey, quick break. If Fraud to Fearless has made you think, feel, or reflect a little deeper, you're officially part of the family. Hit subscribe on the podcast, follow us on YouTube and socials, or leave a review. It really helps us to reach more people who need these conversations. As a thank you, you guys, we're randomly selecting a few of our founding followers to receive some free swag. It's just our way to say we see you and we're grateful. Don't miss out. Subscribe, share, and follow along the journey at Fraud to Fearless, because you belong here. Back to the pod. Hayden, the moment that you said the skill of communication, how important that is in being a leader, you just made my whole life, because my undergrad was in communication. And I feel like for the longest time when people would hear that, especially when I would tell them that it's not business communication, it's literally the study of how you talk to other people, I would get these stares like, are you planning on living on the streets, kind of a thing. But it really is an undercurrent that helps in every single job and every single role. And conflict has always drawn my attention, because I feel like it's been a huge part of my life. Just conflict has been a huge part of my life. I wanted to figure out how to not have it anymore, or how to handle it when it came up.
Don't take this the wrong way. But full transparency here. I remember when we were in grad school, the two most common undergrad degrees that go into a master's of HR, one is psychology and the second is communications. So me as the
Is
accounting
it
undergrad.
really?
Oh yeah, every year when I
I
go
knew
and recruit, like 2/3 at least of the cohort is either psych, IO psych, or communications.
shout out. Good.
Dominant undergrad in the MHR program, and not just Utah State. Like when you look at MHR programs across the country, those two, that's a feeder, right? Those undergrads are feeders to HR graduates programs. But so me as an accounting undergrad, I was one of maybe one or like three people who had a business undergrad in our cohort. And I was like, you actually can study communications? I was like, doesn't everyone do that every day? Like, why? What is a career in that? And I just think the difference between mediocre and great is actually, it's not like 1x, 2x, it's like 10x, 100x, 1000x. And that to me, now that I'm well into my career, being great at communication, like you can only get better. And I think it doesn't matter how technically gifted I am at my job. Leadership will always be limited if I am a bad communicator. It will always be limited if I'm a bad communicator, because if I can read people perfectly, if I come up with all the best ideas, if I can't communicate them, it's a wash. It does not matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I think you just modeled a very good example of how to handle a difficult conversation right before this when you said, "Don't take this the wrong way." You're prefacing it. That can make some people's heart start to pound because they're like, "Oh no, what's coming after?" But I want to talk about some of these tips as we
Yeah.
go through the episode of the small, simple things that you can do to really improve the communication within between individuals in a team with your kids in day-to-day life. I want to pull out some of these like gems that we can just start practicing today.
One that I've used, I think this is a Brene Brown tip that my wife actually taught me. But early on in marriage, whenever we had a disagreement or like a frustrated discussion, or one of us is in the grumpy zone, it's hard to not give feedback and not feel personally attacked when the feedback is not intended to insult me. It's intended to change a tendency or change something that we normally do when we're tired or we're frustrated or we're not on the same page. And so one that I've actually used on you, Brooke, is the tool is called the story I'm telling myself. And it's just like don't be offended or don't take this the wrong way. It's a tool just like that, where it's in quotes, you say, the story I'm telling myself is. So if I say, Brooke, I don't think you're working hard enough on the pod and you're not spending enough time with me and all this stuff. That would be very easy for you to feel like that was a personal attack on you, instead of, hey, Brooke, like the story I'm telling myself, I miss you. And I think we should spend more time talking about the pod. And like, let's just make sure that our priorities are aligned. Two very different ways of communicating basically the same thing. So I've used that, Brooke. I've used the story I'm telling myself. I've used it at work, given feedback to big leaders if I was ever giving critical feedback. So I've used it at work a lot. I've used it in my marriage. I've used it with friendships. It is a very easy tool that sets the stage for whatever comes after. And I think it puts the listener's heart in the right place of, oh, Hayden's not personally attacking me. Hayden's telling me how Hayden feels. So that's a powerful tool that I use a lot.
Yeah, I like it because what it does is you're not talking in absolutes. You're not saying this is true or pointing the finger. It leaves room for this is just the story I'm telling myself. I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying this is false. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is wrong. It's just my perspective. And I think that's why it lands so well with people, because it doesn't feel like an absolute. It doesn't feel like a big pointing finger. It feels like an honest, genuine perspective that is open to be shifted or looked at a different way. So I love that. I would say the first one that came to my mind is communicating about how we communicate. So I bet if we just sat and did this exercise right now, where we just listed what are the biggest pain points or conflicts that we typically avoid. And if you just think about, you could categorize this maybe into different areas of your life. Like, what are the conflicts, frustrations that come up at work? What are the frustrations that come up in your everyday life? Maybe it's your neighbor's dog keeps pooping on your lawn. Like this thing that's frustrating, but you aren't talking to them about it because it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's, I just went and stood in line to go return Amazon stuff at the UPS store, and my kids are sprinting all around. There's this huge long line. They're poking each other in the nose and screaming, snip, snip, snip. And I'm just like, okay, how do I have this conversation with them in front of a crowd when I'm feeling stressed and I've got to get back, right? So writing down a list, first observing what are all the pain points in my life, and then why are they coming up? Because that gives us a place of where to start. Now, sometimes we're just going to experience stuff. I'm going back to the leadership thing. If you're a first-time leader or you're new to leadership, or it's just you've been in leadership for a while and now you're having a new experience, you might have never gone through this particular thing before, and you're going to learn when you're in the middle of it. But the key is to communicate about how we're going to communicate about the hard thing. If people have an understanding of where that's going to be already, it takes this heightened state of emotion or stress or anxiety about something and it brings it down. So, Hayden, for example, when we first started, I don't know if you remember this, when we first started the podcast, in my mind, I had all of these thoughts in my head of where are the pain points that this could happen, because both of us, we really value our friendship and that relationship that we've built. And so we didn't want anything to disrupt that. The same thing with your team. You want to be respected. You want to have, a, you know, the best relationships that you possibly can. So, okay, what's going to happen how are we going to talk about when we feel like someone's not pulling their weight? How are we going to talk about when these things, these pain points, how should I bring that up with you? How do you like to be communicated with? Starting there with people is huge with building a bridge.
You hit something that's been one of my approaches throughout my career is regular feedback. So I've had a whole bunch of different managers and different roles, and a best practice is if you have feedback, both good and bad, you give it real time. Don't wait. If you wait and you say, hey, remember 2 weeks ago in staff when you did this? I felt like you came on a little strong, and it's too late. It's like I might have forgotten, and it's like now it feels like you're targeting me. It's like if something bad happened in staff meeting, you need to tell me after, like immediately. And it's like, look, do whatever's reasonable, right? Sometimes immediate feedback isn't always realistic, but the more you let things simmer and you wait and you don't give feedback, then when feedback is given, it becomes an event. The best managers, in my preference, Brooke, as a leader, is with me. You know where you stand. I'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, but it's regular. And so like if Hayden gives feedback, it's not a shock to the system. It's, oh, okay, like again, subtle change, course correction. You're driving a car, you venture off. Don't overcorrect, just a subtle little change to get back on course. I think that's really important. I got to ask Brooke, because your example at the Amazon store returning a package made me think of this. When you're at a restaurant and you get the wrong meal, do you send it back?
You know, I'm
Let's
trying to
not
think
say
if
it's
I've
like a
ever
wrong
had it.
side. Like, let's say it's a completely different meal. Like, you can eat it, but it's not what you ordered at all.
So the old me would probably not have. And I'm trying to think if I've even had that experience, and I haven't. But I have had an experience where like something was wrong. And how I handle those situations, Hayden, is when the server comes back, I'll say, "Thank you so much for bringing this. I'm so excited. I asked for this specific thing. At least I thought I did. I could have completely miscommunicated this. Can you please help me? What are my options?" kind of a thing. And so it's not accusatory. I'm open. I know that I've thought before, like for sure I said this specific thing and maybe I didn't. Maybe it came out the wrong way. And people are always happy to help. So I'm open, to the situation, but it's never like you did this, give me the thing that I
Yeah.
want.
No, that's good. I wouldn't, Brooke. I hate doing that. So maybe that's the imposter talking, but here we are sitting talking about difficult conversations, but it's super real. Like when you're at
Yeah.
a restaurant and you get the wrong meal, like conflict is not something people in general want to race towards. But I think just clarifying your intentions and having a team mindset instead of accusations is super helpful. One thing, Brooke, that I learned working at Wells Fargo, it's very common in service jobs for the person who's providing the service to complete the transaction, and then there's normally like a check-in. So the service person normally says something like, "Anything else?" You never say that. Never say anything else, because it's almost like hoping that you say no to like get them out of the door. And so at Wells Fargo, they said, "What else can I help you with today?" So it's just like a change in phrasing, but the meaning, it feels different. Another example from a difficult conversations perspective is no one likes firing someone. At least they shouldn't, because if you enjoy that, there's something wrong with you. But
Yeah.
there's a way, Brooke, that you can have that conversation and do it respectfully. At the end of the day, you want to treat people with respect. You want to give them the information that they need. And I think don't go in assuming you know how they're going to react. Obviously, plan accordingly, right, if there's any security concerns. But I think, Brooke, for the most part, when I've been in those situations and those conversations, if we just say, "Look, like, this is an unfortunate situation, but we'd like to explain the information that you need to know and like what's going to happen next. But like, this is the situation. It's unfortunate, but we wish you the best of luck in the future." It kind of is what it is, you know? So, have you ever fired someone?
I did have to do firing. This was before I ever had any HR experience. I worked at a gym and it was really hard. It was really
Yeah.
hard because the reasons why we needed to fire, sometimes it's most difficult to say the actual reason why and to dance around the edges of something else because you're hoping that it feels softer or you don't want it to influence how they feel about you. And so, oh man, it's just like a pit in your stomach when you have to do something like that.
Yeah, it really is. But if you're going to be a leader, eventually in your career, you're going to have to do it.
How can you create an environment where having difficult conversations like this, you're making it as easy as possible would be like step one or phase one. And then phase two is what do you do in situations where you aren't prepared for this? You just have to make a decision or do something on the fly. Like, how do you actually do that? Can we just kind of go through those phases really quick, maybe with some live examples and then tips and tricks that we could do with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So going back to this idea of creating a culture where difficult conversations is a little bit easier, I think this one is the proactive approach. So you can do this in your family, in your team, in wherever you're at, your organization, is you can create a culture of this and you can start today. And I think the way that you do this is by modeling and creating psychological safety for conversations like this to happen. And you start with offering yourself up. So, the way that I've tried to do this in my teams, Hayden, is to say, look, there are going to be things that we do working in our time together. You guys are going to see my strengths. You guys are going to see my weaknesses. There's going to be things that you love about me, and there's going to be things that drive you absolutely crazy that I do. There might be some things that I know that I need to work on, and there might be things that I am not even aware of at all. And in order for me to be the best leader that I can be for you, and in order for me to create and build an amazing, incredible team, I want you to give me that feedback. And so then, Hayden, in all of my one-on-ones that I have, I ask them, I'll check in and see how their experience is and ask what I can do to better support them. And I'll ask them for the feedback. I'll create a space where they feel safe to actually give me hard feedback. And ask them, is there anything that I'm doing that, to make it, because it's hard. It's hard to initiate that conversation. But if they feel like they can do that with me, then when it comes time that there's something that I don't really like that happened, or there's a deliverable that didn't turn out how I expected, they know that I'm bringing that up out of love, and they've seen that from me every single time how I have modeled it. So they're much more likely to take that in a better way than just like bringing it up randomly.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about working in HR is getting to be the right hand or the consigliere to big business leaders. Most people don't know what HR does. They think Toby from The Office or whatever. But some of the best business leaders that I've supported, Brooke, like officers, like the big jobs, they do what you just said. Where like I am brand new to supporting the leader. I know absolutely nothing about their leadership style, their organization. I'm just a person, like at that point, at the very beginning. Like I need to learn all this stuff. But I have an opinion and I have a perspective. And even being new, it's a fresh perspective. So a great example of this, what you just said, Brooke, is I was in a like a talent review where the leader is with his leadership team, and we were talking about talent and talking about processes and actions and strengths and opportunities, whatever. So he went for like 45 minutes, and this is like the first week I'm supporting him. And he's like, all right, everyone need a break. And so we took, after like an hour and a half, we took like a 5-minute break. The first thing he did is he went to his computer, he pulled up Teams, and he pinged me. And he said 2 words, any feedback? Question mark. And I was like, what do I say? You know, because but it's like, wow, isn't that leadership? Like, he was leading his team. I'm brand new, but he's setting the environment that from the get-go, Hayden now feels comfortable to give him feedback, even if it's hard, because he gave me the invitation to give feedback. So when the difficult conversation needs to come, I have already been given the green light to deliver said difficult conversation. This is as simple,
Yeah.
Brooke, in the life and relationships, like you asking your kids, what can you do to be a better mama, right?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
an example of setting the tone and giving permission for others to feel safe to give difficult conversations.
Yes. So now what happens when you're like, okay, this is great in an ideal world, Brooke and Hayden, but I have to have this difficult conversation tomorrow or in the next 30 minutes. I don't have time to do this. Like, I just need to have the conversation. Or it's not like I can go over and talk to all my neighbors and be like, hey, so if your dog ever comes and is like wrecking our lawn, then this is how do you want to communicate about it? You have to go and have a hard conversation with somebody. How do you start? What do you do? I think there's a million different ways to do this, but I'm curious, Hayden, I want to put you on the spot. Like, how do you handle it? And maybe there's a specific scenario that comes to your mind. What
Yeah.
do you do?
For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to show a little symbol that I have on my work desk that I've had for years on my work from home desk that I'll let Brooke describe for those that are listening to Spotify or Apple. But 2 words is kind of my kind of mantra, and you got to do this.
Be brave.
Yeah, so I have this little wooden symbol from Etsy or somewhere. It's cheap wood, but I just have that and I look at that all day in my work desk at home. But the best advice, Brooke, I would say to your point is if you haven't set the tone with your team or you're on a team and the leader has not set the tone of proactive and regular safe environment for difficult conversations, you just got to have some courage and you got to be brave. The example that comes to mind was probably the most taken off guard I've ever been from a conversation at work. And it happened recently. It was probably like 2 or 3 months ago. One of my peers that I work with all the time, I've known this person for years, worked very closely. We're like very close work colleagues and have been through a lot of really challenging projects. We were working together and I was in a influence position over this individual, and we had a one-on-one and we had been working on a really difficult project together for months, and we had regular one-on-ones and spent a lot of time, like, this person and I were in the trenches doing a lot of very challenging project work with very senior leaders. And this person in a one-on-one goes, hey, Hayden, can I give you some feedback? And it's so hard, Brooke, not to be like, oh my gosh, like, what is this going to be? Like right now,
Makes you
I'm
scared.
tired. It's hard to not, it's just difficult. That opening is difficult to hear because you naturally just assume it's going to be bad. So whenever that happens, like whenever I get told that, pencils down, like eyes right at the camera, you're mine. Like, I am going to listen to every single thing you say, which is, I think, another tip, right? You got to be brave.
Step
You got to
one,
be courageous.
listen.
But if you get feedback and it is like, hey, Hayden, can I give you some feedback? The most attentive you can be in a discussion happens right now. So anyway, I'm listening and I'm trying to make my face warm. Sometimes I kind of have a resting, what face, which I don't try to do. So yeah, this person essentially went on to say that they don't feel like I trust them. And I was so confused because I was the exact opposite. The exact opposite. Like, I trust
With how
this
you felt.
person 1,000,000%. But the way we were working together, the way I was giving instructions, or the way we were dividing work, I was giving the impression that I did not trust this person. And so I asked some questions to understand it a little bit more, but then I told this person that it's the exact opposite, and like, what can I do to be better? And so I took that, we worked through it. And the other thing I did is the next week in our one-on-one, I, of course, asked at the end, I was like, how'd I do this week? Progress, or do you feel like I trust you? And then anyway, we fixed it. But Brooke, it was seriously like a 180. Like, I would have never
Wow.
expected this person to say this about me, because I just felt the exact opposite. So that was one example
Yes.
of this.
I'm laughing because literally, okay, you guys, before we started recording, now I'm just doing show and tell. I literally pulled out this, you can't read it. It's called Interpersonal Conflict. It's one of my textbooks from college to reference. And what you just explained is textbook perfection for handling a difficult conversation when you're receiving that difficult conversation. Somebody's coming at you. I'm going to say the steps in different words to what the example that you just barely gave. It's listen, immediately listen. Then you're asking open-ended questions to get more curious. Next step is you reflect the feelings back. So you're saying, this is what I heard from what you said. Am I understanding this correctly? A really good tip is just to repeat verbatim. I heard you say that you don't feel like I trust you because of X, Y, and Z and X, Y, and Z. That really feels reaffirming to somebody, just to verbatim say back what they just expressed to you. You reflect their feelings, then make sure you clarify. Am I understanding this correctly? Is there anything else that I missed? Give them a moment to expound or say something further. And then you can summarize, and here's next steps for what I think would help the solution. So, textbook perfection right there. This is the best dialogue to handling interpersonal conflict with another person. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Wow.
Bravo.
Taking it out. I'm blushing over here. A textbook, not bad for an accounting
There you go.
student.
There you go. Hayden, I have a little bit, kind of a different story, or maybe something that people will run into with having to give difficult feedback. I think when there is a difficult conversation that I have to have, usually it's not about whatever the thing is that I'm worried about. It's not the actual message that I'm worried about delivering. The thing that stresses me out the most is how the person is going to perceive me after. Like, if it's going to affect our relationship or whatever else. And so I think that's where a lot of my like people pleasing tendencies, where I just don't want to say anything because I I don't want to ruin that relationship. So like, I'd rather just whatever, I'll go and redo the project, or I'll go whatever else. It's not sustainable. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable as a leader. You can't go redo every single project or tell somebody this wasn't up to standard or whatever else. You have to have the conversation. And so this is the skill that I have had to develop over and over again. And there's something that helps me. The first thing that I do is I think, what is going to be most difficult? What do I think is going to be most difficult about me giving this feedback to the other person? If I put myself in their shoes, what do I think they're going to think of this and how they're going to handle it? They might feel frustration. She didn't communicate this to me. They might feel overwhelmed, like, oh, I spent all this time doing it and now I have to redo it. I make a list of all the potential things. And then I start with that. I say, okay, you know what? I was reviewing this document that we talked about together. I saw a few things. I know, and I just say all of the things that potentially could happen. I hate having these conversations because sometimes they can feel so frustrating that we have to go redo work, and I probably did something along the way that messed this up. So please give me feedback as we go through this so that I can help with this kind of situation again. And blah, 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 whatever the thing is. And then I directly go into, this is what I noticed. We've got to fix this. And what I've had to overcome in my own mind is that me giving this feedback is not an attack on them or their character. It's just the fact of something that needs to be done, and how I treat them in the process and communicate that will help so that they don't feel that it's attack on their character or who they are as a person. It's just the reality of the situation instead.
Yeah, I think I'm really itching, Brooke, to do I think a future miniseries needs to be growth mindset. But I think it is so easy when having a difficult conversation as the receiver to fall into the trap of fixed mindset. When it's like, isn't it good? Feedback is a gift. Someone is telling you how they're perceiving your behavior or your actions. And it could be intended or not intended. It could just be their perception, which doesn't need to be your reality, but you can influence it. It's their reality because it's their perception. But getting that feedback, they told you. They literally told you how to get better. And the amazing thing is, you get to choose whether to accept it or not. But at least you have the knowledge. Wouldn't you prefer to know, even if it means like you have a difficult conversation that maybe is a little uncomfortable because we don't experience it all that much? So I just think people don't, I think the narrative of feedback and difficult conversations is wrong. I think we're afraid of fixed mindset and don't give ourselves credit that we can influence, but now we have the information to make it better. It's like a revision of a paper in college. Like imagine if you never got feedback. You just submitted something and got a grade versus you submit something, you get some feedback, and you have a chance to change before you final submit and then get your grade. Everyone would pick the feedback so that they kind of know where they are before they actually get the grade. Brooke, are you familiar with the concept MA? M-A? I think I'm pronouncing it right.
I have no idea.
Okay, so this is honestly, it's a really beautiful dynamic in Japanese culture. Okay, so Japan has significantly lower divorce rate than like everywhere else in the world. And so it was studied, like, what's different? Is it just there's something in the water over there? They're all getting married and they're divorcing much less than the rest of us. And the Japanese concept, it's called ma. So roughly translated, ma in English is the space between. So generally, right, you watch in the TV shows and the movies, like when you get your standard US couple and there's a difficult conversation, there's like yelling. So there's a disagreement and it turns into yelling and frustrated discussions, which then turns into bad stuff, right? Like you call someone a name or you insult someone. And actually, what's wrong with that scenario is the heat of the moment. The frustration that you're currently feeling escalates the issue to levels that are unnecessary. So ma, the space between, is a Japanese cultural concept where when couples have a disagreement, they pause and are silent for 2 minutes. So the issue is brought up and then they stop and they sit silently for 2 minutes. Sometimes
in
less.
the same, in the same room.
You sit on the couch
they're
and
still there.
no talking. Yes. And then after you've taken some deep breaths, you're not going to yell, then the conversation is continued. That simple pause for 2 minutes is one of the main causes to the divorce rate in Japan being lower than everywhere else. Isn't that amazing?
Oh,
Isn't that so
wow.
simple? I mean, in the moment, I'm sure when you're ticked off, it's probably very difficult to, you know what, let's sit here on the couch for 2 minutes and not solve all of our problems. But It's not rocket science. It's literally silence. So, my challenge to those of you listening, and Brooke, you and I need to do this as well, when we're going about our days, and maybe like try practicing it with your kids, like your family, whenever you feel like you're in the danger zone of flirting with saying something that you shouldn't say because you're in the heat of the moment, practice ma. Take Start with 30 seconds, a minute, whatever is realistic for you, and literally be silent, and then have a adult conversation that maybe is difficult, but do it without the heat of passion and frustration.
Challenge accepted. I love it. So, in summary, Hayden, we've talked about a lot of good things. We've talked about how you can create a culture to help you have these difficult conversations. We've talked about when you need to have a difficult conversation, and there's been nothing that's prepared you for it, like firing somebody, or you just have to go give feedback. To remember, this is the human experience. Talking about that, stating that from the beginning and approaching it from that perspective can change everything. And then use ma, silence. It's the simplest. It requires no studying, no textbook reading. Just take a moment and be still.
Yeah.
The story I'm telling myself. So if any of these techniques or tools has resonated with you today, or you're thinking of somebody else, whether that be somebody in your life that you would like to practice this with, or another peer or leader that you know could benefit from this conversation, send it to them. Leave us a message after you've practiced some of these things and the impact that it's had on your team or your group. We'd love to hear it. Any other ideas that you have implemented that have been super effective for you when having difficult conversations? We love this topic and we'd love to hear from you. We love you guys. This is Fraud to Fearless. And for now, that's the pod.